In the small town of Pine Ridge, where winter cloaked the streets in white silence, Robert Manning stared at the partially open garage door across the street. 7 years of hollow existence since his son Noah vanished had taught him to expect nothing, but there it was, a flash of red and blue stripes hanging on a hook inside his new neighbor's garage. The same distinctive pattern as the backpack Noah wore when he disappeared walking home from school. Robert's breath froze in his lungs. His heart forgot to beat. His mind whispered a question he'd given up asking. Could Noah still be alive? Before we dive into this story, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now and what time is it there? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story grabs you, please subscribe. Your support means the world to me. Robert Manning's house still looked like a family home from the outside. The blue 2-story with white trim had a swing set in the backyard that hadn't felt a child's weight in 7 years. Inside was different. Inside was where time had stopped on December 15, 2016. Robert moved through the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, eyes automatically drifting to the faded height marks on the doorframe. Noah Manning, age 11. The last mark showed 4'9", measured just weeks before he vanished, walking home from school on a snowy Thursday afternoon. The kitchen calendar still displayed December 2016, though Robert knew it was now 2023. He just couldn't bring himself to flip those pages. Not after Diane left, not after the police gave up, not after the community's sympathy hardened into awkward glances that seemed to say, "Move on already." But how do you move on when every morning feels like that Thursday? When every snowfall brings back the image of Noah's bright red hair against his brown winter jacket, that fleece-lined hood he loved so much framing his freckled face and gap-toothed smile. Robert's routine never varied. Wake up, check Noah's room, coffee. Stand at the living room window watching school children pass by. None of them Noah, never Noah. The neighborhood had changed around him. The Petersons had another baby. The Wilsons got divorced. Old Mrs. Hargrove died, and her house sold to a young couple, and just last month the Anderson family across the street had moved out suddenly, replaced by the Millers, who Robert had barely acknowledged despite their attempts at neighborly waves.
Mr. Manning? Hello?
Robert startled. Sarah Jenkins, the kindergarten teacher who'd moved in next door last summer, stood on his porch with a foil-covered dish. Her kind eyes crinkled with concern beneath her dark bangs. "I made lasagna. Thought you might like some." This wasn't the first time Sarah had appeared with food or conversation. She seemed determined to pull Robert back into the world of the living, one casserole at a time. "Thank you," Robert mumbled, accepting the dish without invitation to enter. "The neighborhood association is having a gathering next weekend," Sarah said, undeterred by his distance. "It would be nice to see you there." Robert nodded non-committally. Sarah's kindness was a small light in his darkness, but socializing felt impossible. How could he make small talk when his world had ended 7 years ago? When somewhere out there, or nowhere at all, was the boy with bright red hair who had been his entire heart. December 15th, 2023. 7 years exactly. Robert stood at his living room window, a silent sentinel as he had been every anniversary. The snow fell in fat, lazy flakes, just like that day. His phone had buzzed earlier with a text from Diane. "Thinking of you and Noah today." She'd remarried 2 years ago, moved to Arizona, built a new life from the ashes of their shared tragedy. Robert couldn't blame her. Sometimes he envied her strength. Night fell early, as it always did in December. The streetlights cast yellow pools on the pristine snow. Robert watched the Miller family return home, father, mother, 2 daughters around 7 and 9, too young to have known Noah, too innocent to understand the darkness that had swallowed one child from this seemingly safe neighborhood. Mr. Miller, Joseph, according to the mail Robert sometimes accidentally received, pulled into their driveway. The garage door rumbled upward, headlights illuminating the interior. The family disappeared inside, but the garage door stuttered halfway down, then rose again, clearly malfunctioning. Joseph Miller emerged, fiddling with the remote. Inside the brightly lit garage, Robert could see lawn equipment, bicycles, storage boxes, the normal detritus of family life. Then something caught Robert's eye. Hanging on a hook near the back wall was a backpack, red with blue stripes. Robert's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood. Noah's backpack had been red with blue stripes, a custom design from his aunt for his 10th birthday, just months before he vanished. "No," Robert whispered, pressing closer to the window. "It can't be." But the pattern was unmistakable, even from across the street. The same unique design Noah had been so proud of. Robert's hands began to shake. Was his mind finally cracking under the weight of grief? Was he seeing connections that weren't there? The garage door finally closed completely, cutting off his view. Robert stood frozen, heart hammering against his ribs. The Millers had moved in only a month ago. They couldn't possibly have Noah's backpack. It made no sense. Unless they knew something about Noah's disappearance. Unless they were connected somehow. A knock at his back door pulled Robert from his spiral of thoughts. Sarah stood outside, stamping snow from her boots.
I saw your light on,
she said when he opened the door. Figured today might be hard. Brought dinner. Robert barely registered the casserole dish in her hands. I think I just saw Noah's backpack. Sarah's expression shifted from sympathy to concern. What do you mean? In the Miller's garage, hanging on the wall. His backpack red with blue stripes. Sarah set the dish down and guided Robert to sit at his kitchen table. Robert, lots of backpacks have stripes. You've been staring out that window a long time today. It was his, Robert insisted, the certainty growing with each second. I'd know it anywhere. The Millers just moved here from Seattle, Sarah reminded him gently. They have 2 little girls. They couldn't have anything to do with Noah. But Robert wasn't listening anymore. 7 years of dead ends, false hopes, and unanswered prayers had taught him to expect disappointment. But what if, just this once, the universe was giving him a sign? What if Noah's things had somehow found their way back to taunt him, or to lead him somewhere? I have to know, he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. Sarah's hand covered his. Robert, please. Don't do anything rash. You've been down this road before. She was right. 3 years ago, he'd confronted a man at the supermarket who had a boy with red hair. 2 years before that, he'd called the police about a child in the park who laughed like Noah. Each time, his hopes had crashed against the rocks of reality. But this felt different. This was Noah's backpack, in a garage across the street. The question that had haunted Robert for 7 years returned with brutal force. What happened to Noah Manning? And now a new question joined it. What did the Millers know about it? For 3 days, Robert watched the Miller house. He called in sick to the accounting firm where he'd worked half-heartedly since Noah's disappearance. His colleagues, used to his absences around this time of year, asked no questions. He noted the family's routines. Joseph left for work at 7:15 a.m. Mrs. Miller, Laura, dropped the girls at school by 8 o'clock, returned around 8:30. The garage door had been fixed. Robert couldn't see inside anymore. He started taking photographs with his long, unused camera. The Millers coming and going. The garage door opening and closing. Anyone watching would think he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. On the 4th day, Sarah appeared at his door again. Your car hasn't moved in days, she said, concern etched on her face. Are you okay? I'm fine, Robert said, not meeting her eyes. Sarah glanced past him at the living room where photography equipment was scattered across the coffee table. Research. She followed his gaze across the street. You're watching them? The Millers? "Robert, this isn't healthy. I need to see inside that garage again." "And then what? What if it's just a similar backpack? What if it's nothing?" "Then I'll know," Robert said simply. Sarah sighed. "Promise me you won't do anything illegal. No breaking in, no confrontations. Promise me." Robert nodded mechanically, but his mind was already elsewhere. On Friday night, the Millers loaded suitcases into their SUV. "We're visiting my parents for the weekend," Laura told one of the neighbors loud enough for Robert to overhear from his porch. The house went dark as evening fell. By midnight, the neighborhood was silent, except for the occasional passing car and the soft rustle of snow falling through bare tree branches. Robert stood in his living room, staring at the Miller house, empty, unguarded. The answer to 7 years of questions possibly sitting inside their garage. Before he could reconsider, he pulled on his coat and slipped a flashlight into his pocket. The rational part of his brain screamed warnings, but it was drowned out by the desperate need to know. The night air bit at his face as he crossed the street. The Miller property was dark, except for a single porch light. Robert moved around to the side of the house, where a smaller door led into the garage. Locked, of course. But years of owning an older home had taught Robert a few things about simple locks. It took less than 5 minutes with a credit card to pop the latch. Inside, he flicked on his flashlight, keeping the beam low. The garage was neat and organized. Bikes hanging from ceiling hooks, garden tools arranged on a pegboard, plastic storage bins labeled in neat handwriting. And there on the back wall, exactly where he'd seen it, a backpack, red with blue stripes. Robert's hands trembled as he approached it. Up close, there was no doubt. The special reflective piping Noah's aunt had added for safety. The slightly crooked NASA patch Noah had sewn on himself. Even the small tear near the bottom zipper from when Noah had caught it on the school fence. This wasn't just similar to Noah's backpack. This was Noah's backpack. Robert reached for it with reverent fingers. Breath caught in his throat. Inside was emptiness. No school books, no treasures, just the faint scent of mothballs. His flashlight beam swept the garage wildly now, all caution forgotten. What else of Noah's might be here? And how had the Millers gotten it? In the corner, Robert spotted a stack of plastic totes labeled winter clothes. He pried off the lid of the top one and froze. There, neatly folded on top, was a brown winter jacket with a fleece-lined hood. Noah's jacket, the one he'd been wearing in the last photo ever taken of him, standing beside his mother as snowflakes fell around them. Robert pulled it out with shaking hands, burying his face in the fabric. 7 years had dulled any scent of his son, but the memory was vivid. Noah laughing as he zipped it up, complaining it was too puffy, but secretly loving how warm it kept him. The sound of a car door slamming jerked Robert back to reality. Headlights swept across the garage door. Someone was home. He stuffed the jacket into his coat, grabbed the backpack, and lurched toward the side door. Before he could reach it, the main garage door began to rumble upward. Caught in the widening gap, Robert froze like a deer in headlights. Laura Miller stood there, keys in hand, mouth dropping open at the sight of her neighbor in her garage. "What are you doing?" she gasped, eyes darting to the backpack in his hands. Robert backed away. "Where did you get this? Where did you get my son's things?" Confusion replaced fear on Laura's face. "Your son's." But Robert was already bolting past her, out into the snowy night, clutching the backpack to his chest like a shield. He ran across the street to his house, slammed the door behind him, and collapsed against it, heart threatening to burst from his chest. From her house next door, Sarah watched his desperate flight. Their eyes met through their respective windows, hers wide with shock, his wild with a terrible certainty. The Millers had Noah's belongings. But how and why? The questions hammered at Robert's brain as he clutched the tangible proof that his search wasn't madness after all. Sunday morning found Robert in Detective Morales' cluttered office at the Pine Ridge Police Department. The backpack and jacket lay on the desk between them, sad artifacts of a 7-year-old mystery. "I understand how this looks to you, Mr. Manning," Morales said, his voice carefully neutral. "But breaking into your neighbor's garage is a serious offense."
Did you hear what I said?
Robert demanded. "These are Noah's things, the things he was wearing when he disappeared. And they were in the Miller's garage." Morales, older now, gray spreading through his once black hair, sighed heavily. "Robert, we've been here before. They had 3 years ago with the red-haired boy at the supermarket. 2 years before that with the child in the park. Each time, Robert's certainty had crashed against hard reality. This is different," Robert insisted. "These are his actual things." Morales picked up the backpack, examining it. No name tag, no identification. "How can you be sure it's Noah's?" "The NASA patch. He sewed it on himself. Look how crooked it is. And this tear," Robert pointed to the bottom zipper. "He caught it on the fence at school 3 weeks before he disappeared." The detective nodded, but doubt clouded his features. "Robert, the Millers moved here 1 month ago. They have no connection to this town or your son's case. Then how do they have his things?" Robert's voice cracked with desperation. "There are innocent explanations. They could have bought these items secondhand, at a thrift store, a garage sale. Noah's backpack was custom-made by his aunt. It's one of a kind." Morales pinched the bridge of his nose. "Look, I'll talk to the Millers. But Robert," he leaned forward, eyes serious. "No more breaking and entering. They could press charges." Robert left the police station with empty hands. Morales had kept Noah's things as evidence, though his expression suggested they would end up in a box collecting dust, just like all the other leads in Noah's case. At home, Robert paced his living room. The Millers would return tonight. Morales would talk to them tomorrow. By then, they'd have time to hide whatever else they might have of Noah's, or worse, flee. Robert needed to know more before they returned. He turned to his computer, searching property records, social media, anything he could find about Joseph and Laura Miller. The results were unnervingly normal. Joseph worked for a software company. Laura was a part-time graphic designer. Their daughters attended the local elementary school. They'd moved from Seattle after Joseph's company relocated him. Before Seattle, they'd lived in Portland. No criminal records, no red flags. But one detail nagged at Robert. The Millers had purchased their house from a real estate company, not directly from the Andersons who had lived there before, and the house had sat empty for nearly 5 months between owners. Further digging revealed that the Andersons had moved away suddenly, just 3 weeks after Noah's disappearance. At the time, no one had thought much of it. Tom Anderson had claimed a job opportunity in Riverdale, a city about 3 hours away. The Andersons' son, Tyler, had been 17 when they lived across the street. A sullen teenager who'd had run-ins with the police for vandalism and marijuana possession. Robert remembered Noah mentioning once that Tyler had shoved him off the swings at the park. Could there be a connection? The timing of the Andersons' abrupt departure had never struck Robert as suspicious before. He'd been too consumed by fresh grief. But now, a knock interrupted his thoughts. Sarah stood on his porch, arms crossed against the cold.
"I saw you running from the Miller's garage last night," she said when he opened the door. "What did you do, Robert?"
He pulled her inside, away from potentially watching eyes. "I found Noah's backpack and his jacket, the one from the last photo of him." Sarah's face softened with concern. "Oh, Robert, don't look at me like that," he snapped. "I'm not crazy. I took them to Detective Morales this morning." "And?" "He thinks they could have bought them secondhand." Sarah nodded slowly. "That makes sense. People sell stuff all the time." Noah's backpack was custom-made. Robert pulled up a photo on his phone. Noah on his 10th birthday proudly displaying his new backpack. See? One of a kind. Sarah studied the image, then looked up with troubled eyes. What did Morales say he'd do? Talk to the Millers. Tomorrow. Robert resumed pacing. But I can't wait. I found something else. The Andersons, the family who used to live in that house, they moved away right after Noah disappeared. Their son Tyler was always in trouble. You think they were involved somehow? Sarah's voice was careful, neither encouraging nor dismissing. I don't know, but I need to find out. Robert spent the afternoon searching for the Andersons online. A social media profile for Tom Anderson showed they still lived in Riverdale. Robert found their address through a property tax record. I'm going there, he told Sarah, who had stayed, making coffee and watching him with worried eyes. Robert, please? Wait for the police to investigate. They've had 7 years to investigate. 7 years of nothing. Sarah placed a gentle hand on his arm. At least let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone right now. Robert hesitated, then nodded. Having someone else there might keep him from doing something he'd regret. The drive to Riverdale took 3 hours through increasingly heavy snow. They arrived at a modest suburban home with Christmas lights already strung along the gutters. Robert sat in his idling car, staring at the house. What exactly are you planning to say? Sarah asked. Robert honestly didn't know. He'd been running on instinct and adrenaline since seeing that backpack. I'll ask them about the things they left behind. See how they react. Be careful, Sarah warned. Don't accuse them of anything. But when Marjorie Anderson opened the door to find her former neighbor on her porch, her face drained of color. Robert Manning. Hello, Mrs. Anderson. I was hoping we could talk about Noah. Her eyes darted past him to Sarah, then back to his face. Tom's not home. This isn't a good time. It's been 7 years, Robert said quietly. Every time is a bad time. Something like guilt flickered across her features. I heard they never found him. I'm sorry. Did you leave anything behind when you moved? Anything that might have stayed in the garage? Marjorie's hand tightened on the door. No, we took everything. Are you sure? Because the new owners have some things that belong to my son. A crash came from inside the house. Something dropped or knocked over. Marjorie's eyes widened. I need to go check on that, she said quickly. Already closing the door, I'm sorry about your son, Robert, but we can't help you. As the door swung shut, Robert caught a glimpse of a young man hurrying up the stairs, taller now but unmistakably Tyler Anderson. He ran, Robert said as they walked back to the car. As soon as he heard my voice, Tyler ran upstairs. That doesn't mean he's guilty of anything, Sarah pointed out. He might just not want to face you after all this time. But Robert couldn't shake the feeling that he'd touched on something important, the fear in Marjorie's eyes. Tyler's quick escape. The Andersons knew something about Noah. He was sure of it. They arrived back in Pine Ridge after dark. The Millers' house was lit up. Their SUV in the driveway. They had returned from their weekend away. What now? Sarah asked as Robert parked in front of his house. I wait for Morales to talk to them tomorrow, but even as he said it, Robert knew he wouldn't sleep tonight. Not with the truth so tantalizingly close. Promise me you won't do anything reckless, Sarah said, squeezing his hand. Robert nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the house across the street, where Noah's belongings had been hidden all this time. I promise. It was a promise he had no intention of keeping. The next morning, Robert called in sick to work again. He watched from his window as Detective Morales arrived at the Millers' house at 9:15 a.m. The conversation at the door lasted less than 10 minutes. Morales never went inside. When the detective's car pulled away, Robert's phone rang. They bought the items at a garage sale in Seattle, Morales reported. About 6 months ago, they had no idea the backpack and jacket belonged to a missing child. And you believe them? Robert's knuckles whitened around the phone. They showed me receipts, Robert. They buy and resell vintage clothing as a side business. They purchased a lot of children's items from an estate sale. That's impossible. Noah's things couldn't have ended up at an estate sale in Seattle. Morales's sigh crackled through the phone. I know this is difficult to accept, but there's no connection here. The Millers are innocent buyers who happen to purchase items similar to Noah's. Similar. They're the exact same items. Robert, Morales's voice softened. I've been patient because I understand your grief, but this ends now. The Millers are considering a restraining order after your break-in. Don't contact them again. The call ended. Robert stood frozen, staring at his phone. Similar items? No? He knew his son's belongings. He could pick them out of 1,000 backpacks, 1,000,000 jackets. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. What did Morales say? Robert didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed his car keys. He needed to talk to the Andersons again, properly this time, with questions that demanded answers. The drive to Riverdale felt shorter with determination fueling him. This time, he parked a block away and approached the Anderson house on foot. No sign of Tom's car in the driveway. Good. Marjorie opened the door with the same fearful expression as before. Robert, please. I told you yesterday. Your son took Noah's backpack and jacket, Robert said, his voice deadly calm. I don't know what you're talking about. But her eyes darted nervously. The Millers bought Noah's things at a garage sale in Seattle. How did his belongings get across the country when he disappeared in Pine Ridge? A voice called from inside the house. Mom? Who is it? Tyler appeared in the hallway behind his mother. He'd grown taller, filled out, but Robert would recognize him anywhere. The sullen teenager was now a college-aged young man. Their eyes met. Tyler froze. Then he bolted toward the back of the house. Tyler! Robert shouted, pushing past Marjorie. Stop! He chased Tyler through the kitchen and out the back door into a snow-covered yard. Tyler scrambled over a fence, but Robert, driven by 7 years of pent-up desperation, followed with surprising agility. Leave me alone! Tyler shouted over his shoulder, panic in his voice. What did you do to my son? Robert bellowed, gaining ground. Tyler darted between houses, slipping on icy patches. Robert stayed close behind until Tyler rounded a corner and vanished. Robert skidded to a halt, spinning in circles, searching. Only silence and falling snow surrounded him. Defeated, Robert trudged back to the Anderson house. Marjorie stood on the back porch, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. Why did he run? Robert demanded. What is he hiding? Tears streaked Marjorie's face. Tyler bullied Noah. He felt terrible after Noah disappeared. That's all, he wasn't involved. Then why did he have Noah's things? We don't know anything about Noah's backpack or jacket. Her voice trembled. Please, Robert. We suffered too when Noah vanished. The whole neighborhood did. But they hadn't suffered like Robert had. They hadn't lost everything. If Tyler contacts you, Robert said, tell him I won't stop until I know the truth. The drive back to Pine Ridge was a blur of swirling snow and dark thoughts. Tyler's reaction wasn't the response of an innocent person. He knew something. Robert was certain of it. When Robert arrived home, exhausted and chilled to the bone, he found his front door ajar. Heart pounding, he pushed it open slowly. The house had been ransacked. Drawers pulled out, furniture upended. Noah's bedroom torn apart. On the living room wall, someone had spray-painted 3 words in angry red letters. Stop looking now. Robert stood in the midst of the destruction, a strange calm settling over him. After 7 years of emptiness, he finally felt something powerful again. Someone was afraid of what he might discover. Someone wanted him to stop searching, which meant there was something to find. He called Detective Morales, who arrived 30 minutes later with 2 officers. They photographed the damage, dusted for fingerprints, took Robert's statement. "The timing is suspicious," Morales admitted as he surveyed the graffiti. "Right after you confronted the Andersons again, Tyler ran when he saw me," Robert said. "He knows something about Noah." Morales nodded slowly. "I'll look into the Andersons' sudden move after Noah's disappearance. It wasn't flagged as suspicious at the time, but maybe it should have been." It was the first time in years Morales had shown real interest in pursuing Noah's case. Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, flickered in Robert's chest. After the police left, Sarah arrived, gasping at the destruction. "Oh my God, Robert, are you okay?" "Someone doesn't want me asking questions," Robert said, a grim smile touching his lips. "Which means I'm asking the right ones." Sarah helped him clean up the mess. As they worked, Robert told her about chasing Tyler and the break-in. "The Andersons are connected to Noah's disappearance. I'm sure of it now." "But why would they keep his backpack and jacket?" Sarah asked, logical even in the midst of chaos. "If they hurt Noah, wouldn't they get rid of all evidence?" It was a good question, one that had been bothering Robert too, unless they didn't mean to hurt him, unless it was an accident and they panicked. The theory formed as he spoke it aloud. Tyler bullied Noah. What if they got into a fight? What if something went wrong and the Andersons covered it up? Sarah paused in her cleaning, expression troubled. That would explain why Tyler ran and why they moved away so suddenly. "And why Noah's things ended up far away from here," Robert added. "They would have gotten rid of anything connecting them to Noah." As they stood in the wreckage of Robert's home, a plan began to form. The Millers had Noah's backpack and jacket. What else might they have unknowingly purchased that belonged to his son? And what secrets might those items reveal? "I need to see if the Millers have anything else," Robert said. "Not by breaking in again, but there has to be a way." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then said, "The Millers are hosting a neighborhood holiday party this weekend. Everyone's invited, including you." For the first time in 7 years, Robert felt the flame of purpose burning away the fog of grief. Noah deserved justice, and Robert was finally on the right path to finding it. As night fell, he stood at his window watching the Miller house, no longer focused on them as suspects, but as unwitting holders of clues. Across the street, Joseph Miller emerged from the garage, carrying a box of Christmas decorations.
The garage. The place where Noah's backpack and jacket had been kept. What other secrets might it contain? Robert would find out. For Noah, for himself, for the truth that had been buried in snow and silence for 7 long years. The anonymous letter arrived the next day, slipped under Robert's front door while he was showering. Plain white envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of printer paper with a message in bold computer-printed letters, "Stop digging if you want to stay alive." Robert stared at it, a chill spreading through him that had nothing to do with the December cold. Someone was threatening him now, not just warning him away, but actually threatening his life. He called Morales immediately. "First the break-in, now this," the detective said, studying the letter in an evidence bag. "Someone's definitely nervous about your investigation." "The Andersons," Robert insisted. "Maybe. I looked into their move after Noah disappeared. Tom Anderson did get a job offer in Riverdale, but it paid less than his position here. Strange choice, especially mid-school year. They were running away." Morales nodded thoughtfully. "We're re-interviewing neighbors from back then, seeing if anyone remembers anything unusual about the Andersons around the time Noah vanished, and I've requested cell phone records from that period."
The detective seemed almost energized by these new developments, a stark contrast to years of telling Robert to accept that they'd never know what happened to Noah. "What about the Millers?" Robert asked. "Have they found any other items that might have belonged to Noah?" "They're cooperating fully. They're as disturbed by this as anyone. Said they'll look through all the items they bought at that Seattle sale." After Morales left with the threatening letter, Robert sat at his kitchen table, thinking the Millers were having their holiday party in 2 days. He needed to be there to look for any other clues in their home. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Just heard about the letter. You should stay with me tonight. Not safe alone." The offer was tempting, both for safety and companionship. Over the past days, Sarah had become more than just a concerned neighbor. She was his ally, his support, perhaps even a friend, something Robert hadn't allowed himself in years. "Thanks, but I'll be okay," he texted back. "Need to think." Later that afternoon, Robert noticed a moving truck pulling up to the Miller's house. Joseph and Laura emerged, speaking with the movers. Robert watched in disbelief as they began loading furniture. The Millers were moving out, just days after he'd discovered Noah's belongings in their garage. He called Morales immediately. "They told me this morning," the detective explained. "Joseph's company is transferring him back to Seattle immediately. Some project emergency." "That's too convenient," Robert argued. "They're running away just like the Andersons did." "They've lived in that house barely a month, Robert. This isn't about you or Noah." Morales paused. "Look, I know you're seeing connections everywhere right now, but the Millers are innocent in this. Focus on the Andersons." Robert hung up, unconvinced. The Millers might not be involved in Noah's disappearance, but their sudden departure meant losing access to potential evidence, more of Noah's belongings that might hold clues. The holiday party had been canceled. Robert was running out of options. That evening, Sarah came over with dinner. They sat at Robert's kitchen table, watching the Millers direct movers through the window. "What if there's something else of Noah's in that house?" Robert said. "Something important they haven't found yet?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "I could help. Laura invited me to coffee yesterday, before all this moving chaos happened. She's overwhelmed with packing. I could offer to help get inside the house." Robert stared at her, a surge of gratitude washing over him. "You do that?" "I've been researching Noah's case," Sarah admitted. "The police reports, newspaper articles. The investigation was rushed, incomplete. You deserved better." The next day, Sarah texted that her plan had worked. Laura had gratefully accepted her help, packing the girls' rooms while Joseph was at work finalizing his transfer. "The garage is still full of boxes," Sarah reported when she returned to Robert's house that evening. "Laura said they're leaving most of the garage contents for the movers tomorrow. Too much to sort through." "We need to search it tonight," Robert said immediately. "Breaking in again? After what happened last time?" "Not breaking in. I still have the backpack and jacket I took. I'll return them. Say I want to apologize to Joseph. While I'm keeping him busy, you search the garage." Sarah looked doubtful. "That's still trespassing. It's our last chance before they leave. Please, Sarah. I need to know if there's anything else of Noah's there." After long deliberation, Sarah agreed. They would go that night after the Millers had gone to bed. At midnight, the neighborhood was silent. Snow fell softly, covering their footprints as they crossed the street. The Miller house was dark, except for a single upstairs light. "Remember the plan," Robert whispered, clutching Noah's backpack. "I knock, apologize to Joseph. You slip into the garage while I'm keeping him busy." Sarah nodded, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Be careful." They approached the house from different angles. Robert walked up to the front door while Sarah circled around to the side garage entrance. Heart pounding, Robert raised his hand to knock. Before his knuckles could touch the wood, Sarah's urgent whisper came from the darkness. "Robert, come here." He hurried around to the garage. The side door was partially open. Sarah stood just inside, flashlight beam fixed on something. "I found this before I even started looking," she said, voice shaking. Robert peered over her shoulder. In an open box marked yard sale items was a small video camera, an old model with a flip-out screen, written on the side in faded marker, "Property of Tyler Anderson." Robert's hands trembled as he lifted the camera from the box. It was at least a decade old, the kind that recorded onto mini DV tapes, a relic from when Noah was alive. "Why would Tyler's camera be with Noah's things?" Sarah whispered. Robert turned it over in his hands. The battery was long dead, but a tape was still inside. "We need to see what's on this." They slipped back across the street to Robert's house, hearts racing, the camera clutched tightly in Robert's hands. It felt impossibly heavy, as if the weight of truth itself was contained within its plastic shell. Finding a charger for the ancient camera proved challenging. After an hour of searching through old electronics in his basement, Robert unearthed one that fit. They plugged it in, watching the charging light blink slowly to life. "This could be nothing," Sarah cautioned as they waited. "Just random footage Tyler took." "Or it could be everything," Robert countered. His mind raced with possibilities. Had Tyler somehow recorded what happened to Noah? Had he been documenting his bullying? Or was this camera completely unrelated, just another second-hand item the Millers had purchased? When the battery indicator showed enough charge, Robert's finger hovered over the playback button. 7 years of uncertainty, of endless questions, might be answered in whatever footage this camera contained. Or it might be another dead end, another false hope. Sarah placed her hand over his. "Whatever's on there, you're not alone." Robert nodded gratefully, then pressed play. The small screen flickered to life. Static gave way to shaky footage of trees, snow-covered ground, teenagers laughing off camera. The timestamp in the corner read December 15th, 2016, the day Noah disappeared. Robert's breath caught in his throat. The camera panned wildly, eventually focusing on Tyler Anderson's face, younger and smugger. "Testing, testing," he said with a mocking grin. "Today we're going to teach a little snitch a lesson." Another boy's voice off camera. "Is it recording?" "Yeah, we want to remember this." The footage cut to a clearing in the woods behind Pine Ridge Elementary School. Robert recognized it immediately, a spot where older kids often hung out, away from supervision. 3 teenage boys waited there, Tyler among them. They were passing a cigarette back and forth, laughing. "Here he comes," one of them said. The camera turned. Walking into the clearing, small and vulnerable against the backdrop of bare trees and snow, was Noah. His bright red hair was unmistakable beneath his brown hooded jacket. He clutched his red and blue striped backpack tightly. Robert made a choked sound. Noah, his Noah, alive and moving on the screen. The last moments of his son's life, preserved on this forgotten tape.
"You wanted to meet me?"
Noah's voice was high, uncertain. "To apologize?" Tyler's laugh came from behind the camera. "Apologize? For what?" "For forepushing me." "That's what you said on the note." Tyler handed the camera to one of his friends and stepped into frame. "I lied. You told the principal I was smoking. Got me suspended. You were smoking on school property. It's against the rules. Nobody likes a tattletale, Noah." Tyler advanced on the smaller boy. "Nobody likes a kid with stupid red hair either." Noah backed away, toward the edge of the clearing. "Leave me alone. I'm going home." "Not yet." Tyler lunged forward, grabbing Noah's backpack. "First you apologize to me." "Let go." Noah twisted, trying to free himself. The camera shook as the person filming moved for a better angle. The edge of the clearing, Robert now saw with rising horror, was not just a line of trees, it was a steep embankment, dropping down to a rocky stream. And Noah was backing toward it, unaware of the danger as he struggled with Tyler. "Say you're sorry," Tyler demanded, shoving Noah hard. Noah stumbled backward, losing his balance at the edge. His eyes widened in surprise and fear, then he was falling, tumbling out of frame. A sickening crack came from off-camera. The teenager's laughter cut off abruptly.
Shit!
"Tyler, what did you do?" The camera swung wildly, capturing snow, trees, scared teenage faces. Then it pointed down the embankment. Noah lay motionless at the bottom, his body crumpled at an unnatural angle against the rocks. A dark stain was spreading beneath his head, turning the white snow crimson.
Is he dead?
One boy whispered. The camera tumbled, apparently dropped in panic. It landed pointing sideways, capturing feet and snow and fragments of panicked conversation. "We have to call someone." "No, we'll get arrested." "It was an accident." "No one will believe that." Tyler's voice, shaking but resolute, "We can't tell anyone ever. We have to hide him." The footage ended abruptly. Robert sat frozen, the world collapsing around him. Noah hadn't been kidnapped by a stranger. He'd been killed in a stupid, senseless accident by a teenage bully, then hidden, erased, while Robert spent 7 years searching, hoping. "We need to call Morales," Sarah said softly, tears streaming down her face. "Right now." The drive to Riverdale was a blur of snow and streetlights. Detective Morales sat grimly in the passenger seat, the camera with its damning footage secure in an evidence bag. 2 police cruisers followed behind, lights flashing but sirens silent. Robert gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles showed white. The tape had revealed the moment of Noah's death, but not what happened after. Where had they hidden his body? What had the Andersons done to cover up their son's crime? "We'll get answers tonight," Morales promised, noting Robert's expression. Sarah had stayed behind to coordinate with officers searching the area where Noah had fallen. After 7 years, evidence would be scarce, but the video provided the exact location. Maybe, just maybe, they would find something the panicked teenagers had overlooked. The Anderson house blazed with lights as they pulled up. Tom Anderson's car sat in the driveway beside Marjorie's sedan. The family was home, unaware that their 7-year secret was about to be exposed. "Let me handle this," Morales said as they approached the front door. "They don't know about the video yet." Robert nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Inside that house were the people who had let him suffer for 7 years, who had watched him descend into grief while knowing exactly what had happened to Noah, who had moved away rather than face the truth. Morales knocked, badge already in hand. Tom Anderson answered, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm at the sight of police cruisers behind Robert and the detective. "Thomas Anderson?" Morales asked formally. "I'm Detective Morales from the Pine Ridge Police Department. We need to speak with you and your family regarding the disappearance of Noah Manning." Tom's eyes darted to Robert, then back to Morales. "We've already told you we don't know anything about that. We have new evidence that suggests otherwise. May we come in?" Before Tom could respond, Marjorie appeared behind him. "Tom, what's going on?" "Police," Tom said tightly. "About the Manning boy." Marjorie's face drained of color. "I don't understand. We already spoke to Mr. Manning." "Is Tyler home?" Morales asked. The Andersons exchanged a quick, fearful glance that told Robert everything. They knew. They had always known. "Yes," Tom finally said. "He's upstairs. Please ask him to join us. This concerns him directly." Inside, the Anderson home was warm and festively decorated for Christmas. Family photos lined the walls. Tyler's graduation, family vacations, moments of joy that had continued for them while Robert's life had frozen in place. Tyler descended the stairs slowly, eyes widening when he saw Robert. "Dad, what's going on?" "Sit down, Tyler," Morales directed. "All of you, please." The Anderson family perched tensely on their living room couch. Morales remained standing, authority radiating from his posture. 7 years ago, Noah Manning disappeared walking home from school, Morales began. For 7 years, his father has searched for answers. Today we found them. Morales placed the evidence bag containing the camera on the coffee table. This camera was discovered in the possession of the Millers, who recently moved into your former home in Pine Ridge. They purchased it at a second-hand sale, along with other items, including Noah Manning's backpack and jacket. Tyler's face had gone ashen. Tom and Marjorie sat rigid, fear evident in their expressions. The camera contains footage from December 15, 2016. Morales continued. It shows Noah Manning meeting Tyler and 2 other boys in the woods behind Pine Ridge Elementary. It shows Tyler pushing Noah, causing him to fall down an embankment, and it records Tyler suggesting that the boys hide Noah's body rather than report the accident. A terrible silence filled the room. Marjorie began to cry softly. Tom stared at the floor. Tyler looked like he might vomit. "Now," Morales said, his voice deadly quiet, "I need to know where Noah's body is, and I need to know who else was involved in covering this up." Tyler broke first, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to push him that hard. I didn't know the edge was right there." "Where is he, Tyler?" Robert finally spoke, his voice raw with emotion. Tyler looked at his parents, panic in his eyes. Tom gave a small, defeated nod. We hid him in our garage." That night, Tyler's voice was barely audible. "Just until we could figure out what to do." "And then?" Morales prompted. "Dad helped me. We wrapped him in plastic, put him in the trunk of Dad's car." Tyler was crying now, shoulders shaking. "We drove out to Blackwater Creek. There's an old drainage pipe there, deep in the woods. We put him there." Robert closed his eyes, imagining his son's body being dumped like trash, while he organized search parties and printed missing posters. The depth of their betrayal was unfathomable. "And then you moved away," Robert said, opening his eyes to stare at Tom and Marjorie. Tom finally spoke, his voice hollow. "We had no choice. People would have asked questions if we stayed, about why we were suddenly selling the house, about Tyler's nightmares."
No choice?
Robert's voice rose with 7 years of bottled rage. "My son was dead, and you helped hide his body. You watched me search for him. You said nothing for 7 years. Robert." Morales placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. "Let me handle this." But Robert couldn't contain himself anymore. "Do you have any idea what you did to me? To our community?" Children were afraid to walk home alone. Parents lived in fear. I lost my marriage, my job, my entire life searching for Noah, and you knew. "We were protecting our son," Marjorie sobbed. "Tyler was 17. He would have gone to prison. And my son was 11. He'll never have a life at all." The room fell silent except for Marjorie's weeping. Robert stood trembling, tears streaming down his face. Morales spoke into his radio, directing officers to the location Tyler had described. Then he turned to the Andersons. "Thomas Anderson, Marjorie Anderson, Tyler Anderson, you're all under arrest for the death of Noah Manning and conspiracy to conceal a crime. You have the right to remain silent." Robert watched numbly as the family was handcuffed and led to waiting police cars. Neighbors had emerged from surrounding homes, drawn by the flashing lights and commotion. They stood in small clusters on their lawns, whispering behind gloved hands, watching another family's tragedy unfold. "I want to go there," Robert told Morales, after the Andersons had been taken away, "to Blackwater Creek. I need to see where they put him." Morales hesitated, then nodded. "It won't be easy, Robert. Nothing has been easy for 7 years." The drive to Blackwater Creek took 40 minutes. By then, police had already secured the area, powerful floodlights illuminating the winter woods. Officers in heavy coats moved carefully along the frozen creek bed, following Tyler's directions to the drainage pipe. Robert stood at the edge of the scene, watching their methodical work. Snow began falling again, large flakes drifting through the harsh light. In the distance, he could hear the muffled shouts of officers. Then activity intensified around the mouth of a large concrete pipe half hidden by undergrowth. An officer emerged, spoke urgently into his radio, and more personnel rushed forward. Morales, who had been conferring with the search team leader, returned to Robert's side. "They've found human remains," he said gently. "It appears to match the description of Noah. The clothing is consistent with what he was wearing that day." Robert nodded, a strange calm settling over him. After 7 years of desperate searching, of wild hopes and crushing disappointments, he had found his answer. Noah had never left Pine Ridge. He had been here all along, hidden in the darkness while Robert searched the world for him. Robert's voice broke. "Can I see him?" Morales placed a compassionate hand on his shoulder. "Not yet. The medical examiner needs to do their work. But soon, Robert. I promise." As they stood in the falling snow, watching the careful recovery of Noah's remains, Robert felt something shift inside him. The uncertainty that had defined his existence for 7 years was gone. The monster in the shadows had a name, a face. Not a faceless predator who had stolen Noah away, but Tyler Anderson, a stupid, reckless teenager who had made a horrible mistake and then compounded it with an even worse one. And the Andersons, adults who should have known better, who should have come forward, had chosen to protect their son at the expense of Robert's suffering. They had watched him disintegrate while knowing they could end his torment with the truth. But now the truth was exposed. Noah would receive a proper burial. His death would be acknowledged, mourned, respected, and Robert could finally begin to move forward. As Noah's small, blanket-wrapped remains were carried reverently past him, Robert whispered the words he had imagined, saying 1,000 times in 1,000 different scenarios, "I found you, son. I never stopped looking, and I never will stop loving you." Spring came to Pine Ridge, melting away the winter snow to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the soil. 6 months had passed since Noah's remains were recovered and returned to his family. 6 months of court proceedings, painful revelations, and slow, halting steps toward healing. Tyler Anderson had pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and concealing a death, receiving a 15-year sentence. His parents faced lesser charges for helping cover up the crime, but would still serve significant prison time. The other 2 boys present that day, now men in their 20s, had also been identified from the video and charged as accessories. Justice had been served, as much as it could be for a life so senselessly cut short. Robert stood at Noah's grave, freshly decorated with bright spring flowers. The headstone was simple but beautiful, bearing Noah's school photo and the dates of his too brief life. No longer missing, no longer a mystery, just a beloved son, finally at rest. "I brought something for you," Robert said softly, kneeling to place the framed photograph against the headstone. It was the image from Scene 1, Noah and Diane standing together in falling snow. Noah's red hair bright against his brown jacket, both smiling with the innocent joy of a moment neither knew was near their last together. The photo had been damaged during the break-in at Robert's house, but Sarah had helped him repair it. Now it sat protected in a weatherproof frame, a testament to the boy who had been loved so deeply. Diane approached from the cemetery path, laying her own flowers beside Robert's. They stood together in companionable silence, no longer husband and wife but forever united as Noah's parents. "The house sold," Robert told her. "Closing is next week." Diane nodded. "Arizona will be good for you. Fresh start." "I think so too." After Noah's remains were found, Robert had finally been able to let go of the house where they'd once been a family. Too many memories, too much pain lingered there. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first child. Life would begin again within those walls. Sarah waited respectfully by her car at the cemetery entrance. Over the months since Noah was found, her friendship had been Robert's anchor. Not rushing him, not expecting him to simply get over his grief, but walking beside him as he learned to carry it differently. "Will you come back to visit?" Diane asked. "Of course, but I need to go somewhere new, somewhere Noah never was." Robert gazed at the headstone. "He's not there anymore. In that house, in that neighborhood, he's here, and he's here." He touched his heart. As Robert turned to leave, his phone chimed with a text from Detective Morales. "Justice served, thinking of you and Noah today." The police had been transformed by Noah's case too. Morales had personally overseen a review of all missing children cases in the area, determined that no other family would suffer as Robert had. Walking back to Sarah, Robert felt the weight he'd carried for 7 years shift slightly. Not disappearing, it never would, but becoming something he could bear, something that would always be part of him, but would no longer define his entire existence. "Ready?" Sarah asked, taking his hand. Robert looked back at Noah's resting place one last time. The photo gleamed in the spring sunlight, Noah's smile forever preserved. "Ready," he said, and meant it. That's the end of the story. What would you have done if you were Robert and discovered evidence in your neighbor's garage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more suspenseful stories like this one, hit subscribe, click and discover our next captivating tale.